There are plenty of good horror movies. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Ridley Scott's Alien, Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse, Dario Argento's Suspiria, Wes Craven's Scream, David Cronenberg's Video, Takashi Miike's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But there's only one film that I felt was unsettling in almost every facet. From its first frame to its last, The Exorcist is immortalized in the public eye. A mother and two priests are thrown into an inescapable battle against one of the most vile and twistedly provocative characters ever put to screen, and its iconography made it the defining work for supernatural horror, with neck snapping and crotch stabbing and pea soup vomit. All those grotesque visual effects earned it the title, the scariest movie of all time. But if that's all The Exorcist had in store, that'd make it nothing more than a dated fossil preying on the fears of an audience that came to pass. Even nearly 5 decades later, The Exorcist hasn't lost its luster, because while most would paint this story of a priest's loss and reclamation of faith, and the decay of a child in a portrait of warmth and sympathy, The Exorcist has something else on its mind.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
There's a coldness that bleeds into and out of each shot that gives it its almost documentary-esque quality. What we're seeing might not be real, but it feels grounded and authentic. This is because The Exorcist mostly forgoes 3-point lighting in favor of 1-point lighting, and uses natural lighting like the light from a lamp, or a window, or the sky. So, even the most joyous and innocent scenes are seen from an apathetic eye. And all those shocking moments from 1973 hold up to more scrutiny than they would have otherwise. But it's more than selling believability. This cold, indifferent, uncaring lens which we view the story through contributes to this intense feeling of helplessness and despair against the invading horrors. So it's only complimentary that the soundscape that's underlying The Exorcist is instead understated rather than bombastic. Of the total 117 minutes in the theatrical release, only 17 of them are paired with music. Many of those music choices would later become largely influential in films like The Shining, but within The Exorcist, the focus is less upon the music as a mood setter itself than how it can be used to unsettle and discomfort. A cold hand on the back of your neck rather than assertive. The centerpiece of that soundscape is the voice of the demon. Billy Friedkin had said he wanted it to sound like the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch, that it should have both female and male characteristics, but should be identifiable as neither. It wasn't until after many failed attempts at electronically altering Linda Blair's voice that Friedkin settled on hiring a totally separate voice, and the only name that came to his mind was Mercedes McCambridge, who Orson Welles had dubbed the greatest living radio actress.
La plume de ma tante.
How long are you planning to stay in Lake?
Until she rots and lies stinking in the earth.
To create those infamous demonic vocals, McCambridge would have to revisit the demons of her own past. Breaking her sobriety with whiskey and chain-smoking through her bronchitis brought out that uncomfortable, foul rawness. And along with eating raw eggs and strapping her to a chair to bring her into the right headspace, animal sounds recorded by Ron Nagel were layered onto McCambridge to create this otherworldly presence. The results speak for themselves. But what's always stuck with me beyond the blood and puke is the feeling it leaves me with after the credits roll. There's an underlying oppressive atmosphere felt through the whole film, some even saying an evil in the very celluloid itself. For all its horrifying imagery and sounds, it's how The Exorcist flows between them to create a sinister presence that I find so unsettling. It's set to its own disorienting rhythm via simple editing.
You?
Abrupt juxtaposition between length and freneticism or stillness and loudness is abundant throughout to create an unsettling malice hiding just beneath the surface.
gonna die up there.
Sterile medical procedures are turned into striking mechanical nightmares. Falling rocks and dogfights become gestures of demons. And stress and despair are only felt more. While most films utilize this editing technique to highlight cheap scares, The Exorcist uses it as its own disturbing tempo. It happens just enough to accumulate a sense of discomfort and uneasiness, like a constant arrhythmic attack on the senses. Each individual attack, like the demon's influence, is grasping the film tighter and tighter, and as the film goes on, those stretches between the quiet and the intense become larger and larger, with the exorcism itself having the longest gaps between brevity until the credits start rolling. But it's relentless without being tiresome. For the most part, The Exorcist is a slow, methodically paced film. It takes its time building its atmosphere, just like the demon patiently builds up itself. It's the kind of patience that makes it much more spine-chiller than the many manufactured frights it inspired. That slow ramp in intensity can easily bore an audience before its big climactic culmination. But each scene from its opening has the weight of that demonic presence. And that can be attributed to the coldness of what we're seeing and the contrast of what we're hearing between the violence and the score. But what you see and hear are always just as important as how you see and hear them, in simple cuts like these. Between sound and image are important in influencing how you feel. When it's the right editing between the right images and the right sound, the feeling it creates can stick in your mind, and the effect can be fear that lasts for generations.